Sojourner Truth, born as Isabella Baumfree in 1797, was destined to become a powerful voice for freedom and equality. She was born into slavery in Swartkill, New York, during a time when African Americans were treated as property, not as human beings. Her parents, James and Elizabeth Baumfree, were also enslaved, and their lives were filled with the harsh realities of bondage. From a young age, Isabella experienced the brutal world of slavery firsthand. This separation was devastating for Isabella, marking the beginning of a painful journey that would later fuel her quest for justice. Her new owners were cruel, and she endured beatings, hunger, and intense hardship. Despite these conditions, Isabella's spirit remained unbroken. She grew up speaking Dutch, the language of her enslavers, and later learned English, even though education for slaves was discouraged. Over the years, she was sold several times, each time experiencing more suffering. In 1826, Isabella made a courageous decision that would change her life forever. Despite the risk of severe punishment, she escaped with her infant daughter, Sophia, leaving behind the chains of slavery. She found refuge with a Quaker family, who helped her secure her freedom through legal means. Isabella's escape was a bold and dangerous move, but it was also a testament to her unyielding desire for freedom. This early part of her life shaped her into a fierce advocate for justice, not just for herself but for all enslaved people. She knew what it meant to suffer, but she also knew the power of resilience. This was only the beginning of her journey toward becoming the iconic Sojourner Truth. The birth of Sojourner Truth. After gaining her freedom, Isabella experienced a spiritual awakening. Deeply religious, she felt a calling from God to dedicate her life to spreading truth and fighting for justice. In 1843, she changed her name to Sojourner Truth, signaling her new purpose. The name Sojourner reflected her role as a traveler and preacher, spreading God's message wherever she went, while Truth represented her commitment to speaking honestly about the conditions of her people. As Sojourner Truth, she walked hundreds of miles across the northeastern United States, speaking at churches, abolitionist meetings, and wherever she could find an audience. She preached about the horrors of slavery and the need for freedom, justice, and equality for all. Her message was clear: slavery was an abomination, and it needed to end. What made Sojourner Truth such a powerful figure was her ability to connect her own experiences of suffering with broader issues of injustice. She was a storyteller, weaving personal narratives of enslavement with spiritual teachings. Her speeches were often unscripted but filled with passion, which resonated deeply with audiences. Although she was an illiterate black woman, Sojourner Truth's powerful presence and voice commanded respect. She was not afraid to confront powerful white men or challenge deeply ingrained societal norms. In fact, her courage was legendary. One famous story recounts how, during a speech, someone accused her of not really being a woman. In response, Sojourner bared her breast and asked, "Ain't I a woman?" This bold act became part of her enduring legacy. Sojourner Truth was not only a prominent voice in the fight against slavery, but she was also a powerful advocate for women's rights.
Her message was radical for its time. While many early feminists were primarily concerned with the rights of white women, Sojourner Truth boldly declared that all women deserved equality. She confronted the racism within the women's movement, insisting that the struggles of black women could not be separated from the broader fight for women's rights. Throughout her life, she continued to speak out on issues of racial and gender equality. She was an intersectional thinker long before the term existed, recognizing that the oppression faced by black women was unique and required special attention. As the Civil War erupted, Sojourner Truth continued her activism. She recruited black soldiers for the Union Army and worked to improve the conditions for freed slaves. After the war, she campaigned for land rights for former slaves, arguing that they should be given land to support themselves in their new lives of freedom. She met with President Abraham Lincoln in 1864 to discuss her ideas, a remarkable achievement for a formerly enslaved black woman. In her later years, Sojourner Truth continued to travel, speaking about abolition, women's rights, and justice. Despite facing poverty, discrimination, and old age, she remained a dedicated fighter for the causes she believed in. She never stopped advocating for the rights of African Americans and women, even when faced with personal hardships. Sojourner Truth passed away on November 26, 1883, at the age of 86, but her legacy has lived on for generations. She is remembered as one of the most influential figures in both the abolitionist and women's rights movements. Her boldness, courage, and commitment to justice have made her an enduring symbol of strength and resilience for people of color, particularly Black women, who continue to face intersectional struggles today. Her life reminds us that one person can indeed make a difference, even when the odds are stacked against them. Sojourner Truth's legacy continues to inspire activists around the world who fight for equality, justice, and freedom. Early life. Detailing family separation and hardships, Sojourner Truth, born Isabella Baumfree, not only suffered the physical horrors of slavery, but also the emotional trauma of family separation, a common experience for enslaved African Americans. Her parents were sold to different enslavers, and Isabella, at the age of 9, was sold at an auction along with a flock of sheep. This experience is crucial in highlighting the dehumanization of slavery, where human lives were treated as mere commodities. As a child, Isabella was sold multiple times and experienced brutal treatment, including beatings and harsh labor, which forged her resilience and desire for freedom. Escape from slavery. The role of faith in the legal battle, a key part of Sojourner Truth's story, is her daring escape in 1826. She didn't just flee, she acted with intention, taking her infant daughter, Sophia, and walking to freedom. This move is significant because it reflects her deep religious faith, which she claimed guided her to find the Quaker family who sheltered her. Later, she successfully sued for the return of her son, Peter, who had been illegally sold to a plantation in the South. This legal victory was unprecedented for a Black woman in America at the time and adds another layer to her heroic journey. You can emphasize this as a point of pride and strength for your audience. The role of religion in her activism, Sojourner Truth's transformation into a public speaker and activist, was deeply intertwined with her religious beliefs. She believed she had a divine mission to spread the truth about slavery and inequality. Sojourner Truth's legal impact. Besides her famous lawsuit to recover her son, Sojourner Truth fought legal battles that challenged the system of slavery and inequality. She was a woman who did not allow illiteracy to limit her power. While she never learned to read or write, she worked with transcribers to publish her autobiography, The Narrative of Sojourner Truth, in 1850, which brought national attention to her cause. This autobiography also helped finance her speaking tours. Highlighting her legal battles shows how she was ahead of her time in terms of advocacy and agency, making her story even more inspiring for modern audiences. Intersectionality. Fighting for women and African Americans, Sojourner Truth's activism didn't focus solely on Black liberation. She was also a strong advocate for women's rights. Her famous 1851 speech at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio, now known as "Ain't I a Woman?" was a powerful statement against the sexism and racism of the time. She pointed out how women of color, like herself, did not receive the same protections and privileges as white women. This speech is one of the earliest expressions of intersectionality, a concept that recognizes the interconnected nature of race, gender, and class oppression. This makes Truth's life particularly relevant today, as modern movements increasingly focus on the intersection of different forms of oppression. Later years. Her push for reparations. In her later years, Truth continued her activism by pushing for the U.S. government to grant land to newly freed Black people. She argued that formerly enslaved people should be compensated for their unpaid labor with land, a view that aligns with contemporary discussions about reparations. Truth also continued to fight for women's rights, traveling the country and speaking out about the need for equality. Though she faced constant financial struggles, She never wavered in her commitment to justice.